Fellas, we've just wrapped up with UFC Vegas 101. We've had some pretty crazy finishes throughout the entire card. We had a finish in the main event, and I feel like this was one of those cards that gets hated on a lot for not being stacked on paper and there's no hype going into it, but actually ends up being a bit of a banger. I think this is a really good card. We're going to be going through it from top to bottom. Starting off with the first fight with Nurullo Aliev versus Joe Solecki, a short notice fight where Aliev returns and beats Joe Solecki by a fairly dominant decision. My main takeaways from this fight is that Aliev is huge for the weight class. This guy looks like a 170 pounder. I don't know what he's been doing since his time off, but this dude looks huge. But yeah, he's an interesting prospect for the 155-pound weight class is Aliev. This fight basically was him dominating Joe Solecki with the grappling, similar to how Joe Solecki did against Grant Dawson. Very wrestling-heavy approach from Nurullo Aliev. Had an easy job taking Joe Solecki down. Didn't really get going on the feet. There was barely any significant strikes from Aliev, especially in that first round. That third round is where Joe Solecki started to turn things around, but it was just too late when he actually took Aliev down. Like I said, he's an interesting prospect, but he does look beatable. You know, his gas tank is kind of questionable, and he was breathing heavily after that second round. On the feet, he's quite questionable as well. He got taken down quite easily by Joe Solecki. Again, I feel like if Joe Solecki would have had that game plan early on in the fight, he would have had more success. But good win for Aliev, good return. The Khabib clone, we've been waiting for him to come back, and he's come back and he's done it in pretty decent fashion. But yeah, good prospect, I guess, for the 155-pound weight class. Solid grappler to do that to Joe Solecki. The only other guy we've really seen do that to Joe Solecki is Grant Dawson, who was ranked a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going to go with Aliev. Well, I don't know. I'm talking as if it's a prediction, but good win for Aliev. Good prospect. And the next fight we had was Fatima Kline versus Viktoria Dudakova. Now, Dudakova must have been pissed after this loss because she actually ended up slapping her coach. I don't know, there's like a viral video going around of after the fight, Dudakova ends up slapping her own coach. Anyway, Fatima Kline gets a dominant TKO in the second round. This is actually a really good fight. My main takeaways is it was a really fun grappling matchup, very back and forth. Fatima Kline was dominated for most of it, but there'd be times when Dudakova would come back and maybe, get a takedown on Kline. But it was a really fun matchup. And I'm going to say this Fatima is a huge prospect at strawweight. I know she lost a UFC debut to Jasmine Jasudavicius, but she was ranked. She's a huge prospect. She comes from this massive grappling background. To do that to Dudakova, who's known for having good wrestling, was once a prospect herself, completely dominating her with the grappling. And even on the feet, she was very sharp. She was, doing damage in the clinches, elbowing on the breaks of the clinches. She's an extremely high-level grappler. She's a solid striker as well for the women's strawweight division. And she's actively looking to finish the fight. When she takes people down, she's not just racking up control time. She's either looking for a submission or she's going to beat you with ground and pound, which she did with Viktoria Dudakova. So I'm going to say that Fatima Kline is a huge prospect in the strawweight division. I hope she gets another crack at the rankings because I really do feel like she's got a lot of potential. She trains with Erin Blankfield as well, another top women MMA star in the flyweight division. And for Dudakova, still a good wrestler, still UFC worthy. It's only 2 losses in a row to Sam Hughes and Fatima Kline, but I mean, first of all, you can't be going around slapping your coaches. She's also a good wrestler to take down Kline like she did, but yeah, good win from Fatima Kline. Good one, 115-pound prospect. And she looked really good in this fight. Really, well, I'm not going to say it was a really good fight, but it was a fairly fun grappling matchup. The next fight we had was Magomed Ghadziasulov versus Bruno Lopes. Bruno Lopes wins a very Mario Batista-esque decision over Magomed Ghadziasulov, getting the upset win. I thought Ghadziasulov was going to get this one done, and he looked like he was going that way until halfway through the first round, and he just got held up against the cage. Great win for Bruno Lopes. Came in as an underdog against a fairly good light heavyweight prospect. Managed to pick up a win, implementing his game plan. It's not often you see a Dagestani getting out wrestled. You've got Magomed Ghadziasulov from Dagestan, who was getting out wrestled and controlled the majority of the fight by Bruno Lopes. The only other guy I can think of is Sharpinta Magomedov when it comes to Dagestan. He's not been able to wrestle. Very striking approach from Magomed Ghadziasulov, who was definitely the better striker, but Lopes held him up against the cage. There was a few times where he took him down. Then even on the feet, Lopes was having his moments. And I'm going to say that Lopes is someone to look out for at 205. 205 is a division where there's not too many prospects. It's not a super deep and in-depth division. So when you've got somebody like Bruno Lopes, I think he's got like 12 finishes out of like 13 or 14 fights. He's just beat Magomed Ghadziasulov. He won in the Contender Series. He's somebody to look out for at 205. Very well-rounded, very dangerous, had the correct game plan, so his fight IQ is on point as well. And for Magomed Ghadziasulov, still a solid striker. I just think a lot of people are hyping him up for the fact that he's from Dagestan, and I feel like a lot of people do this. He had competitive fights with guys that he shouldn't have been having competitive fights with. Both of these UFC fights and his Contender Series fight was a decision, and now he's just been beaten by Bruno Lopes. So maybe we've got to pack it in and say that maybe he isn't as good as we thought he was, but good win for Bruno Lopes, implementing the game plan, holding him against the cage. And for Magomed Ghadziasulov, he's one of the few Dagestanis that can't wrestle, so that guy needs to go and learn how to defend a takedown, which is something I never thought I'd say about a Dagestani guy. But it was a good win for Bruno Lopes. Not the most eventful fight, but it was his game plan. I mean, if he would have struck with Ghadziasulov, he probably would have got beaten. Next fight we had was Ernesta Kareckaite versus Nicolle Caliare. Not much to really say about this fight. Fun, scrappy stand-up fight, though. There probably wasn't a single 5 to 10 seconds in this fight where they weren't, striking with each other. At first, Nicolle Caliare looked like she was landing the better shots, and then Kareckaite came into the fight, started picking her apart, landing the shots. Nicolle's defense was quite questionable. Kareckaite has some solid kickboxing. I know she comes from a bit of a kickboxing background, as we saw in the prediction breakdowns, but yeah, she comes from a kickboxing background, and her stand-up is pretty good. Caliare just didn't have the reach advantage, and every time she did try to initiate the grappling, Ernesta was just too tall to take down, but it was a fun little scrappy fight. Caliare looked decent too. Her boxing was pretty quick. She had pretty fast hands, but again, she was just inferior on the feet. Not really much to take away from this fight apart from Ernesta getting a good win and looking pretty good on the feet. Then we had probably one of my favourite prospects in the UFC right now. I was going wild when he got this win. Jacobe Smith, who I'm going to mark my words, is going to be the future of the welterweight division. This guy has top 10, maybe even top 5 potential written all over him. I know he's just come from the Contender Series and this is his first UFC fight. This guy has everything. Against Preston Parsons, I predicted Jacobe Smith to get an early knockout, and he did. I think it was like, what, 90 seconds or something like that. Got the brutal KO win in the first round, which was inevitable against Preston Parsons on short notice as well. Unlike a week short notice. Smith is the future of the welterweight division. He's got everything. He's got power. He's one of these classic wrestlers, heavy wrestlers with explosive power. He's got technique as well. He doesn't overswing. He's got the perfect technique. Defensively sound, explosive wrestling. He's just got everything. He's a massive prospect in the welterweight division. I think he's got a lot of potential, and I think he's going to be one of these guys that we see a lot in the future. And you look at his record as well, so many early finishes on his record, and this was another one. He's got, I think his average fight time has to be about 1 minute or 1 minute and 30 seconds. And he's a wrestler as well, getting all these knockouts. Brutal knockout against Preston Parsons, 1-2 down the pipe and puts him to sleep. Preston Parsons is a good pressure grappler, but I feel like he's got a bit of an outdated style. Punahele was able to find him out. He's not the best striker as Preston Parsons, and you don't really want to be pressuring somebody like Jacobe Smith, who has good wrestling and hits like an absolute truck. But Jacobe Smith, brutal knockout against Preston Parsons, the future of the welterweight division. And again, he's got everything. He's not just one of these guys who has good striking that people are hyping up, like a Bo Nicolle in the middleweight division. He's got great wrestling, so he's going to be the next big thing. No, Jacobe Smith are the guys that we need to be hyping up. He looked great on the Contender Series, looked great in this fight, has everything going for him. And I'm going to tell you now, once again, he's the future of the welterweight division. Yeah, I just see a lot of potential in this guy, knocking out Preston Parsons. Solid, brutal KO for Jacobe Smith. And then we had Thiago Moises versus Trey Ogden. This was a really good fight, and I said coming into it that this should have been higher up on the card. Thiago Moises gets a bit of a comeback win. I'm not going to say it was a comeback win, but he gets a win by decision after losing the first round pretty comfortably. Moises looked really good on the feet, and then Ogden got taken. Well, he actually didn't get taken down. He ended up getting out grappled, but that was his own fault. He actually tore his bicep in this fight. I don't know why he was showing Thiago Moises the torn bicep after the fight, as if Moises is going to care. But complete mauling by Moises without shooting a single takedown. I can't remember exactly how the takedowns got in it, how he actually got in top position. I'm pretty sure Trey Ogden took him down, and then he got countered, and then he got, I know Thiago Moises hit him with a leg kick and dropped him, and then he went in guard, went in mount. But no, mauling by Thiago Moises, complete mauling, just dominating Trey Ogden, slashing him up with elbows. Was no jiu-jitsu threat from Trey Ogden as well, just because of how good Thiago Moises is on the ground. It was just a complete mauling. And completely battering Trey Ogden, piecing him up, slashing him open with elbows. Moises is a great 155 gatekeeper. I said coming into it, unless the fighter that Moises is facing is like ranking worthy, he's going to beat them. Look at every single fighter he's lost to in the UFC. Nearly every single one of them are ranking worthy, and he's having fairly competitive fights against top guys. He's just not good enough to make it into the rankings. And you put him against Trey Ogden, I get a fairly good prospect. He does it again. Ogden did look sharp on the feet, and he comes from this big BJJ background. He did look sharp on the feet. He was winning that first round against Thiago Moises on the feet, but he fell short in the grappling department, which was his fault. For all we know, Thiago Moises might have not even shot a takedown had he not shot a takedown against Moises, but it looked like the way that fight was going, his leg were getting slashed up anyway. But good win for Thiago Moises. Great 155 gatekeeper, and Trey Ogden still got potential as well. Like I said, good striker, good jiu-jitsu. Just fell short against Thiago Moises. Then we had Marco Tulio. I could have sworn this guy was called Mario. I might have called him Mario in my prediction video. I don't know where I got Mario from, but Mario Tulio versus Ihor Potieria. Tulio clips Ihor Potieria, drops him, gets a TKO in that second round, and is the new big prospect from the Chute Box gym. My main takeaways is Tulio looked talented, dangerous strike. Well, he looked talented. In this fight, he had dangerous striking, which I assume he has decent grappling as well, coming from Chute Box. A lot of the fighters from Chute Box has a very similar style. They have very kind of, in-your-face Muay Thai, very kind of dangerous Muay Thai, and they also got the Jiu-Jitsu to back it up. So I'm assuming he's got Jiu-Jitsu. I just feel bad for Ihor Potieria. Like, you look at his record. He's constantly facing killers. From the top of my head, he had to face, I think it was Sharput Magomedov. No, it might have been Michel Pereira who he had to fight. He had to face Carlos Huberg, Rodolfo Bellato. Now he's having to face Marco Tulio. He had to face Cesar Almeida as well, who we're going to get onto later on in this card. It just seems like the UFC keep feeding Ihor Potieria killers, and he gets fouled in every fight. He had an eye poke, he had a groin shot in his last fight. He kept getting broken up in the clinch, and he kept getting eye poked. I just feel bad for Ihor Potieria, and now he's going to be cut from the UFC because he's lost most of his recent fights. He missed weight by like 4 pounds. I don't think the UFC are going to keep him, but good win for Marco Tulio, somebody to look out for in the middleweight division. Middleweight division. Good prospect from Shute Box. I've been hearing a lot of big things from him, from the likes of Oliveira and Ian Gary, who also trained from this gym. He looked good in the Contender Series. He looked good in this fight. Very dangerous striker. And he got an impressive win over Ihor Potieria, who's a fairly good striker in himself. I know he's lost a lot of his recent fights, but he's still kind of like this wild striker who's quite dangerous as Ihor Potieria. The vast majority of his wins are by finish as well, but good win for Marco Tulio. Then we had Jose Johnson, the 6-foot-tall lightweight, against Felipe Bunes. Felipe Bunes gets a good submission in the first round. A bit of I guess an upset submission, because I was pretty sure the way that fight was going, Jose Johnson was going to win. My main takeaways is that Johnson was looking really good up until the finish. He was definitely winning the fight on the feet, piecing up Felipe Bunes, and even in the grappling department, he was defending all the takedowns. He actually took down Bunes himself, and then ended up getting taken into a submission. I forgot what the submission was. I think it might have been an armbar or a triangle or something like that, and then he ended up getting submitted. But Jose Johnson did look good, but he has to move to bantamweight now. I'm pretty sure this is the second time now he's missed weight for flyweight. The dude's 6 foot tall at 125 pounds. If that isn't weight bully, if that doesn't have weight bully written all over it, I don't know what is. But now that he's missed weight again, it's going to be one of those times where he's just got to move up to the bantamweight division, which I don't understand why he doesn't move up to bantamweight. He's fought a bantamweight before. He's looked really good. He's had a few finishes. I don't see why he keeps trying to force himself down to 125, which he clearly can't make. But great submission by Bunes. Gets an upset win, high level grappling. And I can't just say he's somebody to look out for everyone, but he has got good jiu-jitsu. Got the submission against Jose Johnson when he was in a pretty bad position. But yeah, Jose Johnson moved back up to bantamweight. He's only lost in the bantamweight division as well is to Damon Blackshear, who's been on a complete roll recently. He finished Chad Enhilliger as well, I'm pretty sure. So good win for Felipe Bunes, good submission, and hopefully Jose Johnson can bounce back at 135. Then we had Punahele Soriano versus Uros Medic. I mean, this fight, I was almost guaranteed it was going to end by first round knockout. I actually thought it was going to be Uros Medic that gets to finish, but it ended up being Punahele Soriano with the first round KO. Looked like he wasn't even going for the KO either. It looked like the way he was setting up the knockout or setting up the strike, he was going for the 1-2 and then he was going to shoot an immediate double leg takedown after that, which he said in the Octagon interview. But he gets a first round KO over Uros Medic. Early brutal KO. I think it was 90 seconds or something like that. Pretty quick KO for Punahele Soriano. Soriano's so inconsistent. He's lost like, I don't know how many he's lost, but he's lost like a vast majority of his recent fights, like 5 of his last 7 or something like that. But when he shows up, he's very dangerous. He comes into the UFC, he's a very explosive striker, kind of falls off, and now he's got it back again, getting a brutal knockout over a dangerous guy in Uros Medic. Great win for Punahele Soriano. Gets the finish in brutal fashion pretty quickly. I know he said he wants the KO of the night bonus, but there's another fight which I think earns more, which I'm going to get onto. But no, great win for Punahele Soriano. He looks much better in the welterweight division since he's moved down to the welterweight division. I don't know if this is his first fight at welterweight or if his last fight was at welterweight, but either way, he's on a 2-fight winning streak now, and he's kind of, he's starting to become a lot more well-rounded. He's got very dangerous striking, brutal KO, a bit of a KO merchant, but he's also got the wrestling. I mean, he's primarily a wrestler, but he just decides to strike because of how powerful he is. So I guess he's doing well in his career. Looks a lot better in the welterweight division anyway than they did in the middleweight. I think this is definitely the division more that's suited for him. Uros Medic, very dangerous guy. I actually thought he was going to get the finish over Soriano, but I mean, you win some, you lose some. Can't really blame him for that. Good win for Punahele Soriano, brutal knockout, and that's definitely stopped him from getting cut from the UFC. Then we had Austin Bashe against Christian Rodriguez. There's got to be some sort of curse around Christian Rodriguez being the prospect killer. Austin Bashe, he did well with the takedowns. I mean, he did well. He initiated the takedowns, got Christian Rodriguez against the cage. Every now and then he'd take him down, but he still looks very green in the UFC. But anyway, Christian Rodriguez is a prospect's worst nightmare. It feels like the UFC keep feeding prospects to Christian Rodriguez, and he keeps beating them. I'm pretty sure he's taken like the undefeated record of 4 different fighters. He beat Raul Rosas Jr., he beat Cameron Simon, I think it was Mike Davis he beat as well, and obviously now Austin Bashe. This guy just keeps beating undefeated fighters. So the UFC needs to stop feeding Christian Rodriguez undefeated fighter, but he looks much better now at 145. It looks a lot more sharp. He started styling on Austin Bashi on the feet, looked very good on the feet, well-rounded a guy. And I feel like he's gone from like a prospect killer to actually being a bit of a prospect in himself in the 145 division. He had some good wins at bantamweight, and now that he's moved up to the featherweight, beat the prospect in Austin Bashi. Good win for Christian Rodriguez. Got the win in fashion. Was styling on him in that third round. There were a few times when he got taken down by Austin Bashi, but Bashi couldn't really do anything with the takedowns. He'd take him down, and then within 30 seconds to a minute, Christian Rodriguez would be straight back up, and then he'd go back to piecing him up on the feet, landing the jabs. I mean, Bashi has solid wrestling, like I said. He's a bit of an explosive machine of a wrestler, but apart from that, he didn't really have anything. He seems like one of these fighters that has a double leg and then nothing else. I'm not saying he's not UFC worthy, but he's 23 years old. He's just been basically beaten comfortable by Christian Rodriguez. Didn't really look that good on the feet. Couldn't really do anything with the wrestling. I think we give Austin Bashi another low-level fighter, and if he loses, maybe we cut him from the UFC. Maybe we'll get somebody from the Contender Series over, put him against Austin Bashi, and if Bashi wins, keep him in the UFC. If he loses, cut him. But he's still got good wrestling. But good win for Christian Rodriguez. Seems like he's become a bit of a prospect killer, which has turned him into a prospect in himself. Looks much better at 145. Then we had Chris Curtis versus Roman Kopylov, the people's main event, and in my opinion should have been the co-main event. A bit of a controversial stoppage, which I'll talk about, but either way, Roman Kopylov looked on fire in this fight. TKO in that third round, getting a bit of a controversial stoppage over Chris Curtis, but it's fights like this that make you an MMA fan. It's fights like this that I watch the UFC for. Stand-up fights where they're just standing and banging, where you think the fight could be ended at any moment for 3 rounds straight. Absolute banger of a fight. Such a fun striking matchup. Roman Kopylov starts landing insane combinations on Chris Curtis. Then in that second round, Chris Curtis kind of makes a bit of a comeback, starts landing on Roman Kopylov, outboxing him as he normally does. But then in that third round, Roman Kopylov comes back and gets the finish. Kopylov is such a nasty striker. He mixes it up so well. The body kicks, the leg kicks, the speed at which he throws, and then just the combination that he throws. He was attacking Chris Curtis with like the punches in bunches. And Chris Curtis did a good job at defending, but every now and then Kopylov would just land and it just cracked Chris Curtis. He's such a fun striker to watch, his Roman Kopylov. One of my favourite strikers in the middleweight division right now, and I hope we can see him get somebody ranked. I know we got mauled by Anthony Hernandez, but with a win over Cesar Almeida and Chris Curtis, I think we give Roman Kopylov somebody in the rankings. Maybe like a Michelle Becerra. I think that could be really fun. It was a bit of a dodgy stoppage though. There was 1 second left of the fight. When Roman Kopylov dropped Chris Curtis wasn't really defending himself, but he wasn't getting attacked either. He got dropped. Kopylov must have thought it was like a one-shot KO type of fight where he kind of walked off. The referee decided to stop it. I mean, Kopylov was going to win anyway. If anyone was going to win on the scorecards, it was going to be Roman Kopylov, but I don't think it should have been stopped. Chris Curtis shouldn't have been stopped in that fight, but yeah, just a really fun back and forth fight between them two of them. Good win by Roman Kopylov. Hopefully he can get somebody in the rankings. And for Chris Curtis, again, I feel so... I don't really feel bad for him because he's one of the saltiest guys in the UFC. The guy complains at every given opportunity, but he has been done dirty a lot. Gets an early stoppage in this fight. Look at a lot of his losses as well. A lot of them were on short notice, or they were against guys where he, top opponents that he could have beaten, and they were really close decisions. So Chris Curtis is still a top fighter, but Roman Kopylov, what if that guy can improve his grappling, become a bit of a defensive grappler, he's going to be a real problem in the middleweight division. So good fight, solid win for Roman Kopylov. Then we had Abdul Razak Al-Hassan versus Cesar Almeida. The best fight of the year so far, on the only card of the year so far. Cesar Almeida getting a huge comeback knockout over Abdul Razak Al-Hassan. A brutal knockout where he just sent him into an unconscious state. Everything about this knockout, I was screaming when this knockout took place. Absolutely phenomenal shot from Cesar Almeida. One of the best KOs I've seen in a while. It was perfect. The way that they countered when he was in danger against Abdul Razak Al-Hassan, who's a very dangerous guy himself, putting him unconscious, flatlining him out cold on the canvas, was a brutal finish from Cesar Almeida, who I always thought was going to be the superior striker coming into this fight. Obviously comes from a glory kickboxing background, and he really displayed that. And he was a comeback KO as well. I'm just going to call him Al-Hassan. Al-Hassan dropped Cesar Almeida in that first round. Looked like he was going to get the finish because he dropped him with a pretty powerful shot. It's kind of like the Ngannou of the middleweight division. Goes for a bit of ground and pound. Cesar Almeida gets back up, and just as Al-Hassan starts raining back on him, he counters with the perfect right hand, putting Al-Hassan out cold. Just as Almeida looked like he was getting finished. Massive knockout. In my opinion, that was the KO of the night. Potentially, and I know I'm saying this on the first card, but I feel like that's going to be a KO that people forget about, but that could be a KO of the year contender. To nearly get finished, look like you're about to get finished by an extremely dangerous guy in Al-Hassan, then to counter back with a brutal knockout. Solid win for Cesar Almeida. He's got next level striking. He's got a win over Alex Pereira in glory kickboxing as well. one of the best striking prospects in the middleweight division. Again, he does need to work on his grappling. I mean, the guy was getting taken down by Roman Kopylov when they fought, but if he can improve his defensive grappling, which he did look like he had improved in this fight, he's going to be a real problem. Dangerous striker, technical striker, and he's come over to the UFC. I'm excited to see what he does next. Maybe we do Chris Curtis versus Cesar Almeida. I think that would be a really fun stand-up fight. And in terms of Al Hassan, still extremely dangerous. Hits like an absolute truck. Like I said, nearly knocked out Almeida, but yeah, he's 36, 37 years old. It seems like he's a bit of a power merchant. I think he's going to get a couple more highlight reel KOs in his career and then he'll be done. But good win for Cesar Almeida. Best KO of the card. Then we had the co-main event, Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Carlston Harris. Again, a bit of a comeback finish from Ponzinibbio. Gets the TKO in the third round. But yeah, a bit of a comeback finish. Santiago Ponzinibbio, I forgot to shade in Carlston Harris. But anyway, Santiago Ponzinibbio, he got dropped in that first round. Looked like he was going to get finished. He was wobbling all over the place. Saved by the bell, to be honest. And then comes back in the second round. Does enough to start piecing up Carlston Harris. And then in the third round, Carlston Harris just looks exhausted. And he gets the finish over Carlston Harris. Again, another really fun fight. One of those fights where there wasn't like a single 10 seconds where they weren't fighting or weren't striking. They were both just going back and forth on each other. Santiago Ponzinibbio did the better to avoid the grappling. Good takedown defense from Ponzinibbio, and he got the finish in the third round. It was a solid fight. Not really much else I can say. It was a solid back and forth fight. Good win for Santiago Ponzinibbio. And then we had the main event between Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas. Mackenzie Dern gets the win. I thought Ribas was going to do enough to win. But yeah, Mackenzie Dern gets the submission, which he does best in that third round where she got a bit of an armbar when there was only 3 seconds left of the round. I don't know if Amanda Ribas knew that, but had she lasted 3 more seconds, this fight might not have gone in Mackenzie Dern's favour. But yeah, Dern has made massive improvements. If you look at her, even like not even that long ago when she was facing the likes of Jessica Andrade and Amanda Lemos, and she looked terrible in those fights. She's made massive improvements. She looks a lot more sharp on the feet. In that first round, she looks a lot more sharp on the feet. Her wrestling has improved as well, and obviously she's got that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experience. She looks like a decent fighter now. She's made massive improvements. She's not just one of these goofy strikers. Late submission in the third round against Amanda Ribas where there's 3 seconds left to go. But yeah, Dern has some of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the strawweight division. That's her main bread and butter. But now that she's coming along with striking, and now that she's coming along with wrestling, she's defensively a lot more sound. Before, she was always entering these dogfights where it just seems like she was on speedrun to CTE, where she's beating these dogfights on the feet and she had no defense whatsoever. But now she's got the wrestling, now she's got the striking, and she's just submitted Amanda Ribas in that third round. I believe she's the first person to submit Amanda Ribas. Very impressive for Mackenzie Dern. I say we do her versus somebody like Yang Xiaonan next. I know Yang Xiaonan's coming off a win, but maybe we do her versus Yang Xiaonan or, I don't know, Tabitha Ricci next for Mackenzie Dern, because I think she's only like a fight or two away from a title shot in the strawweight division. And for Amanda Ribas, she didn't look too bad in this fight. Again, she's a bit of a win-loss fighter nowadays. She didn't look too bad. Probably shouldn't have tapped out considering there was 3 seconds left, but it is what it is. She's still well-rounded. Good win for Mackenzie Dern, though, at the end of the day. And that is, in my opinion, well, that is my breakdown of UFC Vegas 101. Banger of a card. Yes, it could have been a lot more stacked on paper. Yes, there weren't really any big names. I don't think there was a single male fighter that was ranked on this card. But either way, good card, solid card. Let me know your thoughts on this card, and thank you for watching.